Alrighty. Welcome to the inaugural episode of PlayStation Education. Now, a quick thing. What this show isn't. This show isn't a Let's Play, obviously.
No.
We're not playing anything.
No.
This show isn't a review show. No. Not
It's not a real show.
No, this is more about conversing and educating ourselves and you very few viewers at home, Jana, Jojo, about our experiences with the PlayStation as a brand, as a video game ecosystem. And we'll be talking a lot about the present of PlayStation and the future of the PlayStation brand. But real quickly, I want to talk about the past.
Let's take it back.
We'll start, of course, with the very first PlayStation. If I remember correctly, it was 1994, 95.
I was born in 4, so don't ask me.
Such a tiniest, tiniest babies. When it was announced, maybe it was 90. Yeah, I don't even remember what year it was released. 90. Don't remember. It was released in the year 19. We don't remember. But we were actually not a PlayStation family.
No,
we were a Nintendo 64 family. This was a time where, for those of you out there who get all your video games for free, actually, no one from our family, I guess. I don't think Mom ever bought anyone a video game at this point. Mm-hmm. Parents don't have a lot of money. They weren't able to afford to buy us video games, so we actually had to buy our own video games. We did by paper route. If I remember correctly, it was about $50 a month. I'd end up taking away from that after paying for the help and all that. So to buy a $200 system, it was 4 months worth of saving up. And to buy a cartridge, for all you guys that are complaining about $60 games, they were $80 for brand new Nintendo 64 releases back in the day. They were very expensive. So if I remember correctly, it was Nintendo 64, and I want to say our first game was Pokemon Stadium. That was the game that finally made us
get the 64.
They moved to the Nintendo 64, and it came with a little game pack and everything. So it might have been more than $80. It might have been $100 because it came with the game pack and all that.
Yeah.
Them days. But exceptionally great ecosystem on that system, but it didn't have everything. No, there was actually a handful of games that you could only find on the PlayStation that made us eventually get one. Very late in its life cycle. I believe we got one in 2000, either 2000 or 2001. Which, of course, was right before the PlayStation 2 released. So we had the PlayStation 1 for maybe only a year and a half before we actually made the jump to the PS2. That wasn't very long. But there was a handful of games that really stood out for the PlayStation for us. For me personally, the series that defined it was, of course, Final Fantasy.
Of course.
Now, most people say Final Fantasy VII. I actually did not play Final Fantasy VII first. I played Final Fantasy IX. Final Fantasy IX still remains one of my favorite games of all time. I still try to play it at least once a year, if not beat it once a year. Very good game. A lot of great memories attached to it.
Yeah.
Speaking of great memories attached to PlayStation, probably my earliest PlayStation memory related to James, it was the Pick Your Favorite Character game. There was a Crash Bandicoot, Naughty Dog's very first PlayStation 1 release, exceptionally good platformer for the time. Whenever you saved a game, they showed the memory card and had little characters that represented the data on the card. And the data for Final Fantasy IX was, of course, characters from that game, which James mistook for a Pick Your Favorite Character game. And of course,
I wasn't a bright child.
Of course, his favorite character was my save file. That was over 50 hours in, and actually on the second to last leg of the game. That's okay. I remember being very angry at the time, but
I was scared for my life.
I've beat the game numerous times since then. No harm, no foul. And since then, we've become quite close with our PlayStation conversing. Now, that was for me. For you, you had a little different avenue that would introduce you to the PlayStation ecosystem.
Actually, I really like the Final Fantasy games as well, but I didn't start playing them until much, much later. In fact, the first time I actually beat Final Fantasy IX was after you already left for the army.
Mm-hmm.
So my games were, as you mentioned, Crash Bandicoot. I love those games, and that was my thing. Unfortunately, I did do the whole Pick Your Favorite Character game. Some bad times.
That's right. Bad times, good memories.
Yes.
Yes. Which brings us to the PlayStation 2.
Yes.
The very first game I bought for that was, of course, Final Fantasy X.
Another good game.
Very good game. Very good game. In fact, still remains one of the besides the
top block hands and the horrible dubbing.
Zach Knapes. Yeah, that was
missing pant leg.
missing one pant leg. Yes, but visited the search for more pant legs. But that was actually one of the few games that I still would like to go back and play on the PlayStation 2. Very a lot of good memories attached to that game. But that was not the series that defined PlayStation 2 for me. No, the series that came to define PlayStation 2 was Kingdom Hearts. Kingdom Hearts 1 and 2. And to put some perspective out there, Kingdom Hearts 2 came out in 2002. Very good game.
Kingdom Hearts.
Oh, Kingdom Hearts 1 came out 2002, thank you. Kingdom Hearts 2 came out 2006. In fact, I was already in the Army. I was a private first class in the Army. I remember you get 15 days of leave. I actually took 4 of those days of leave when the game came out, so I could play the game all the way through. That's how much I was anticipating and loved that game. We had this conversation previously. The series that defined the PlayStation 2 for you was actually very different. Very different.
I say so. Obviously, I love Kingdom Hearts, but it's another thing that I didn't get into as much until after you were gone. I noticed that as a trend going. You left, and I was like, I'm going to play all these games he always play. For me, it was actually Madden. At that point, I was connecting with Jake and Jason and even Jared because they all played Madden. I was like, I want to play Madden too. It was around the same time I actually started watching football and becoming a football fan. So I really enjoyed the games.
Yes. As I was saying before, that actually was a very good generation for sports fans.
Yes.
Obviously, there's only so much you can do in an 8-bit, 16-bit system. But for the PlayStation 1 and the Nintendo 64 era, sports games were pretty janky, for lack of a better word.
Really bad.
Physics was really bad. Detection, collision detection was really bad. They had to dumb down and simplify a lot of things. The PlayStation 2/Xbox/GameCube era was a great time for sports fans. They kind of ironed out a lot of those kinks. And obviously, when you go back and play them now, they're not quite as polished as the modern versions. But that leap from the PS1 to PS2 was a great time for sport fans.
Pretty big one.
So I completely, even though I did not play a lot of them personally, I can completely see why that'd be the type of series that defined that genre in that area for you.
Yeah.
So that brings us up to the PlayStation 3. Now, if you're noticing a trend, PlayStation 1 to 2 was Final Fantasy is what made me buy a PlayStation 2, and 2 to 3, Kingdom Hearts is what made me want to buy a PlayStation 3, although no Kingdom Hearts on PlayStation 3 was there.
No.
Kingdom Hearts 3 would eventually come out for PlayStation 4 and Xbox One sometime in the future, unless you're watching this in the future, in which case it already came out in the past.
Or if you're watching it right now as it first came out, then it's happening in the present.
Yes.
In which case, I don't know why.
So the series that ended up defining PlayStation 3 for me was the Uncharted series by Naughty Dog. It kind of brings it full circle. If you remember, Naughty Dog is what defined the PlayStation 1 for James, and eventually became the defining company of the PlayStation 3 for me. So it's the same company there, Naughty Dog, that did Uncharted and Crash Bandicoot. They did the Jak and Daxter series, another exceptionally good series on PlayStation 2. In fact, I put more hours into Jak 2 than I did in all 3 of the Grand Theft Autos for the PlayStation 2 combined. That's how much I enjoyed that game. I really, really enjoyed the Jak and Daxter games, but they weren't the defining ones for me. So PlayStation 3, we were separated.
Yes.
I joined the Army in 2005. This was before this new generation started. And so when it finally did start, I ended up leaning more towards PlayStation 3, yourself more towards the Xbox 360. And while I did play a lot of great 360 games, I did own one at one point. For me, what few games I played were the Halo games, of course, the Fable games, and I missed out on a lot of the bigger ones like Alan Wake and Gears of War.
Yeah.
But for you yourself, you were a 360 man. What was the series that defined that generation for you?
Well, usually it's put down either, Halo or Call of Duty, and for me it was Halo. I mean, I like the Call of Duty games. For whatever reason, I enjoyed Halo more. Mm-hmm. Obviously, the Call of Duty games are made much better.
Yes.
You can't stand behind a fence and be like, you can't shoot me with your lasers. But it was still Halo. I mean, all the branches of Halo, I played Halo, with all my friends, family, and it was a really good game to connect and it was fun.
I completely agree. For me, first-person shooters have always been about co-op, about teamwork, about working with family, working with friends, and that's something you sort of can get in the Call of Duty games. That's why I think zombie mode is as popular as it is.
Yeah.
Spec Ops, if you're playing on the other Modern Warfare ones. But Halo just had perfect co-op. It's the full campaign, but with friends.
Yeah.
It scaled well. It played well. I can completely understand why that series would define the 360 for you. I could definitely see why that would make you excited for an Xbox One. But for this generation, we are making the leap together.
Yes.
PlayStation. We're making the leap to PlayStation 4. One of the reasons we're doing this PlayStation education is so I can share some of my experiences on the PlayStation brand and the PlayStation ecosystem with you to kind of help round out your education, as it were, before we go into the next generation. But like I said, each generation, the game that made me buy the system wasn't the game I end up loving.
Yeah.
So while Naughty Dog definitely is one of the reasons I am buying a PlayStation 4, it is completely unlikely that they'll be the reason that, or the thing I think about when I think about PlayStation 4 in the future. And so I'm very excited. I think that's the best part about the future, is seeing exactly what that console-defining franchise will be. So any thoughts?
My mind's blank.
So any closing comments before we move on?
I really hope that PlayStation 4 lives up to what we expect, and I can't wait to see all the kind of games they make for it, because it's in a situation where we expect so much that even if it's just a decent one, it's gonna bomb.
Yes.
So, kind of, crossing fingers here.
Yep. Here's the open, and we'll find out here this November. Although I won't find out till February, because I haven't shipped to Jake's house. Because no tax. I had to pay an extra $30 to buy your system than it cost me to buy his, because I had to pay tax in PA. Thanks, Pennsylvania Democrats.
Take your guns and your religion.
For you back there at home, make your own reaction video. Tell me what your PlayStation memories are, what franchises define these 3 past generations for you. I'm very curious about Josiah's experience. He's experiencing all these games we're talking about now in the present.
Yeah.
Only recently, going back and discovering them. I'm very curious to see what he thinks, what he feels. And I'm very curious also for Jana. She was more of a watcher than a player.
Yeah.
I think PlayStation 2 is the era she finally made that jump, even though it was a lot of co-op games. I'm very curious about the franchise that defined them for her. Baldur's Gates,
that was a great.
Those are some great memories with Jana. Halo 2, great memories with Jana. So I'm very curious what they feel, what they think. So please make a video response. We are very much looking forward to it. And join us next time with your caps on and ready, your notebooks at the ready, as we go deeper in our PlayStation education.
Education.
Bye.